Welcome, welcome. Justin Luke Riley here with Discovering Your Fourth Place. And we have our latest guest on today. Thrilled to have them. I'm going to turn it over to them. They're going to introduce themselves, brag, share a website, share where we can find out more about their organization and their passion. And then we will jump into helping discover their fourth place. Chris, you're up.
Thanks so much, Justin. My name's Chris. It's spelled without an H. It's Cris, which is the first weird thing people notice about me. I'm 50 years old. I live in the St. Louis area, although I'm originally from South Texas. Right now, I'm the founder and president of a growing nonprofit based out of St. Louis that works nationwide with people on a very specific sensory disorder called misophonia. This is what it looks like. It's not well known, but it's actually very common. And so our organization is meant to kind of spread awareness about this thing that is not rare. It's just most people don't know about it. And yeah, we work really worldwide with people to kind of fund research, train clinicians, do peer support groups about this one thing. I have a pretty varied background before that. This was actually a pandemic project. So my background's in theater. So I studied theater in grad school and got a master's of fine arts degree and was doing a lot of theater here in St. Louis. And then the pandemic hit, and there was not really any theater to be happening in the foreseeable future. No performing arts of any kind, as far as we knew. So I decided to start a nonprofit that I saw a big need for. And here we are 4 years later, still doing it.
That's awesome. And so just to make sure we're really, really clear, one, you do get an award for showing up with your own custom t-shirt. That is so far.
Sure.
This is not custom, but I like it. I keep talking about the little tents on my shirt, right? But
Yeah.
I say to say name of the organization for sure and website, how people can get involved, or is that the name of the organization?
No, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
The organization is called So Quiet. Like it's so quiet in here. .org. So soquiet.org. That's our website. Yep.
Awesome. Love
And
that.
it's
Thank you so much.
the name comes from a Bjork song. I was trying to think of a name that didn't include the word misophonia as a branding thing, because there's other organizations that are like the misophonia this and the misophonia that. I wanted something that didn't have that word. So the Bjork song, It's Oh So Quiet, was playing, and I thought, well, there we go.
Awesome. So soquiet.org
That's
if you want
us.
to get
Yep.
connected to Chris without an H organization and get involved and learn more about misophonia, which I'm going to learn more about today on today's call as well. But
Sure.
that's where you go, get involved, donate, donate, donate. Yes, I'm endorsing an organization I haven't even checked out
Thanks.
yet. I actually know Chris, from a couple different calls now, but
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan, as many people know, of philanthropy and investing in people, making a huge difference in other people's lives, especially about something that we're going to hear about shortly. That sounds like the perception of a niche market or niche issue, but it's actually impacting so many people, right?
That's right.
So always love to kind of bring light and attention to those things that are maybe perceived as so quiet, but
Mhm.
maybe misusing that, but I try. So, all right.
Works.
First place, tell us a little bit about home, childhood,
Mhm.
something specifically, though, that you really experienced early on in your life and leadership that has been a contributing factor to the organization that you lead to this day.
That's a great question. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas in the 70s and 80s, which was a great town to grow up in, just culturally and in a lot of other ways. I had a pretty normal childhood, I guess. The lower middle class family, and my parents worked kind of just regular jobs. My mom was a receptionist, and my dad worked for the city. But I was always, looking back, kind of, I felt different. I get maybe a lot of people say that, but I felt like I was different in a little bit of a way. I was just always very creative, even from a very young age. I was drawn to the arts and drawing and theater and those kinds of things. Um, and so, as far as leadership, not through any kind of arrogant reasons or anything, but I always liked not necessarily being in charge, like I want to control people and tell people what to do, but I just wanted to have some say or in what gets done on a particular project. So if it's a classroom project or whatever we happen to be working on, I was in the Boy Scouts and all those kind of normal things. I didn't want to necessarily commandeer everything, but I liked the collaborative aspect of coming up with big picture items of what is a project about? What is the timeline looking like? What is the style of it? What's the concept? So that kind of thing really always interested me. Even as a child, I was
Yeah.
very into design and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can relate in my own way. I mean, as far back as I can remember, and I think very consciously as like a third grader being in leadership, right? Like, and one
Hmm.
of my favorite things that I did, this is now more middle school, but it's called the Odyssey of the Mines, like your
Mm,
mind, not a mine.
yeah.
That's my impression of a mine digging somewhere. But
Oh, I know what
it
I know what you're
was
going for there. Yeah.
Odyssey of the Mines. Like they would dump a bunch of straws, tape, toothpicks, and say, whoever can build the strongest structure wins. And you would just
Yes.
go, and I just loved that stuff. And not only did I love the critical thinking nature of that, but I also loved being like the facilitator. And I didn't even need the credit, but like
Hmm.
someone's going to have to kind of coordinate and lead and communicate. I'm happy to, right? And being more
Exactly.
comfortable in that world. Not that I refuse to be a follower or that I can't be. I mean, I played a bunch of team sports, right?
Oh
And I
yeah,
was the
I could be a
captain of
follower
that.
just fine.
Yeah,
Sure.
for
Yeah.
sure. Right? Like, but all to say is I was more comfortable as captain of the tennis team or leading Odyssey of the Minds, our
Hmm.
small group, than I was just kind of going with the flow. And it sounds like that's very much who you are today, is you're leading something, an
Hmm.
organization that you're really coordinating and bringing a lot of solution to.
That's a great way of putting it. And that phrase Odyssey of the Mind rings a bell from decades ago. I could be
Yeah.
just misremembering, but in the back in the late 70s, early 80s, like the whole idea of a gifted and talented program was kind of a
Yes.
new thing. And it was, yeah, we did a lot of the same things, just very abstract problem solving
Mhm.
in separate classes from the rest of the group, logic puzzles, a lot of brainstorming and things that were unique and experimental in
Yes.
the late 70s. So I was a part of all of that. Yeah.
Yes. And what one of my favorite too that I'll share, I don't usually talk this much, but one of the quick things I'll share from Odyssey of the Minds that anybody out there leading teams can totally steal and rip off, but don't let your team listen to this first or they're gonna know, is one of my favorite team building exercises, if you will, or teaming exercises that we learn is facilitator walks up, puts a stack of newspapers here, and puts a stack of newspapers here and says, half the group stand on this side of the room, the other half stand on this side of the room. And all they said was, whoever can build the tallest structure wins. And immediately, people are almost like a dodgeball, people running towards each
Yeah.
other. And, people are, building structures and finding tape and doing all these pieces. And immediately they start competing and competing and competing to get the tallest structure. And at the end, the one
Mhm.
of the big reveals was, why did you create two different structures? Nobody said, or pardon me, nobody said that there were two teams here. I just happened
Mhm.
to put two stacks down, and we just happened to have half of you stand here and half of you stand here.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything about any type of competition. And so
Hmm.
it's just one of those things of how pre-wired we are, or in most experiences, this is an us versus them. Somebody has to lose in order for me to win, rather than what if we all came together and had the biggest stack of newspapers and actually just stacked them all and said, we're done.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
we so it's one of my favorite stories. Do that with your teams. It will
Yeah.
drive them nuts. And then, you can only do it once ever per team, but I love those things.
Yeah, it's one of those big reveals at the end. You're like, wait a second, why did we do that? Why did
Yeah.
we think it was a competition instead of
Yeah.
of a collaboration?
Yeah. Anyway, so I love
Brilliant.
it. So cruising right through, talk to
Hmm.
me now a little bit about your second place, your job, your work. What is going so smashingly well that you want it to just continue all the time this way? And then
Hmm.
also, so two-part question. And then also, where are you just like stuck? What's not working? Where do you need breakthrough? And, tell me a little bit about what it's like to have that contrast. Here's what's amazing, and here's what's super frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. First of all, I think I'm one of those people, and maybe everybody's like this, but they're just better at getting past it. I'm one of those people who I have to, in some way, really believe in what I'm doing.
Mm.
Even if even when I've worked like in a kitchen at a mom and pop restaurant or something,
Sure.
I have to have some sort of personal connection with what I'm doing and believe in it. So I'm helping this family with their restaurant. I feel like that's a big part of it. The couple of times in my life when I've worked in a sales position, I have to believe in what I'm selling. I can't sell something that I wouldn't personally want to own at the price that I'm selling it for myself. So maybe that's just a weird, uh, I guess, fairness thing that I have.
I think
But
that's just called integrity, but
maybe
go
it's just called integrity
on.
to a fault sometimes. Um,
Anytime I buy a car, I will say, and they're not driving the car, and not like the exact one, but like
Right.
I'm buying an Audi and this guy doesn't drive an Audi, and they've worked there for several years. I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
stuck.
it's
Anyway,
what's the term for this? The term dog fooding. Is that still used? Dog fooding
probably,
is you don't
probably
want
not, but say
it's that's the term I used, which is if the people
each
who
their
are
own.
selling it to you actually feed
Yeah,
the dog food that they make to their own dogs, then that's a good
yes,
thing. But if you're going home
correct.
and they're feeding Purina and not the one that they create, that's a bad sign.
Yes, yes.
Um, so yeah,
No, I love it.
absolutely.
I love the expression. Who knows if we're allowed to say that anymore, but let's go for
I don't know. Yeah,
it.
cat fooding. I have cats.
Fish
Um,
feeding. Yeah, there we go.
Fish feeding, yeah. So that was just the way I heard of it. Yeah, I have to believe in what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Which again, maybe some people are better getting over that, so they have an easier time finding work. But all of the jobs that I've had, I think I've been fortunate enough to have that. So when I do theater, that is very personal. Like there is no feeling quite like a long-term creative project coming to fruition. You
Hmm.
finally get to show it to people. It's opening night, an audience is there finally, and you've been working on this for so long, and maybe they love it, maybe they hate it, but it's just like the electricity in the air is unlike anything else. So I always kind of strive for that, even when I've worked at private companies. For a number of years in the early 2000s, I worked for a tech startup in Austin
Hmm.
that sold academic software. And so that was just kind of a .com, but
Yeah.
we were helping students and teachers get much lower price software than retail price. And I felt like there was some altruism to that. There was some benefit to society through helping people afford tools that they need for their education and not have to pay full price. So, there's some
Yeah.
aspect of that in most of what I try to do.
Yeah. So, with that being said, with your organization today and specifically, one, if you could define misophonia, pardon me.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
that would,
I don't think a lot of other people have heard about it, but you're telling us that a lot of people do resonate with it. So,
mhm.
would love for you to kind of educate our listeners a little bit here.
Sure, absolutely. And I'll try to segue into answering the other question of
Yeah.
what am I doing about it and what do I have to do with it?
Yeah.
Misophonia is basically a sensory aversion disorder. We all know people or have heard of people who have sensory sensitivities. Like sometimes somebody will need the lights dimmed.
Mhm.
It's real common with people with ADHD, which I also have, autism, so forth. We understand that there's certain sensory sensitivities that people have to textures and stuff. So this is in that line. Misophonia is a unique disorder that is mainly a sound, sometimes a visual aversion to things that is really hard to communicate accurately.
Hmm.
A lot of times it comes across as us being particular, that we are judging, but it's really a sensitivity to common sounds that are not loud. So if you ever hear somebody say something like, the sound of that person smacking their gum is about to drive me crazy. I have to leave the room.
Mhm.
That's that's what misophonia is like. And it can be any kind of not necessarily loud, sometimes very quiet sounds, but specific sounds. And it's not that it's annoying, but imagine it was so annoying that it was like making you have a panic or an anger or a fight or flight kind of reaction that's very abnormal.
Sure.
And through there's a lot more to it. It's a very complicated thing, but um, some of the recent prevalence studies in the UK and the US show that about 5% of the population, which is a lot of people, has have misophonia symptoms from a moderate to severe impact on their life.
Mm.
So there's people who have it less so and can live their life but still have the symptoms.
Mm.
So it's actually very common.
Mm. No, that tracks. And I don't want to be like, the guy that's like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, that's me. And like we have this.
Maybe so. Yeah.
What does resonate with me, one, just generally sensory processing. My middle kiddo has sensory seeking, right? So we learned
Mhm.
at a very young age just what that was like. And even now, weighted blankets, like all the things. But
Yep.
from a potential misophonia perspective, fourth or fifth grade, I'm like, I can't write with pencil on paper. Like the lead pencil on
Oh
a piece
yeah.
of paper,
That's very
that's just
understandable, actually. Yeah.
that's horrific.
Hmm.
So very specific pens with paper. Or what I love is my iPad pencil and iPad, right? If I have to write something, because I just hate that.
Yes.
And then the worst, which is essentially torture for me,
Uh-huh.
asking anybody who knows me, is styrofoam. The worst
Oh.
Christmas was styrofoam coming out of that box, and it's just like, I
Is
just
it the
want
texture or the sound of it
the
scraping
sound.
or both?
Yeah, I mean the I don't even like watermelon because of the texture, but now we're really in the weeds here.
No,
But
this is great. I love this.
but yeah, like the styrofoam horrific. There almost
Hmm.
could be nothing worse. Certainly chalk and a chalkboard, but the whiteboard markers and whiteboard no issue. But anyway, so there's just some things there that I could very much imagine that are common things
Hmm.
that I've just made very subtle long-term accommodations to like paper's just the worst. I hate paper. It's just so the worst.
I can completely relate to that. And what's interesting is, we're just at the infancy of these kinds of things being viewed as separate disorders and not just symptoms. And so misophonia, we have a lot to learn about these. There might be different types of sounds disorders that we're kind of grouping under this headline. There might be different other things like tactile sensitivities. They're a separate disorder.
Mm,
And so this is kind of the beginning of that hard to understand if you've never experienced, but you have experienced these sensory sensitivities like this, how it actually impacts your life. And the reason misophonia is a separate disorder is that it becomes very isolating. The
mm,
easiest way to deal with misophonia is to avoid ever leaving your room. But it impacts. I can always connect the dots looking backwards. If you've ever seen Steve Jobs' Stanford commencement address from, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago, he talks about being able to connect the dots looking backwards, but never forwards. And I can see that I was experiencing this in fourth grade. It greatly affected my ability to concentrate, to do any kind of work because I'm trying to pay attention to the teacher, but there's somebody at the back with a slightly clicky pencil, and
mm,
that's all I can hear. My brain is just like hyper focused on that, and I cannot ignore it. There's nothing I can do about it. There's a part of my brain that just says, "You're going to pay attention to this, and it's going to instantly drive you crazy." And
mm.
so, yeah, it greatly affects people's lives. They isolate. We tend to avoid certain friendships, certain careers. I actually have quit jobs looking back because of misophonia.
Mm.
I had a job as a barista one time, and there was people come in and they're smacking their gum, and that is so aversive to me that I just walked out, which is not the best idea on how to handle something like that. But
Sure.
yeah,
Wow.
it can impact all aspects.
Sure.
My wife and I might be grocery shopping, and if there's somebody making a particular sound that I can't stand, I'll just go stand outside while she finishes the shopping. And it just affects a lot of things.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I mean that makes a lot of sense for especially for you as you build an organization and look back. It's awesome that awesome. So like I'm a personal long-term recovery, completely different topic, right?
Yeah, which we can get
Um,
into. There's a correlation there to me a lot. Yeah.
And, so personal long-term recovery. And so for me, that means that, for 17 years, haven't had alcohol or other drugs, all the things. But is when I look back, it's one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life. Hard, yes, but
Yes.
what I've been able to turn that into and I've helped other people and how people have helped me, I wouldn't change it for a thing. Like I have no idea where I'd be in my life today if I did not have that experience. So even though
Likewise.
it's like, huh, man, did I lose jobs over it? Yes. Man, did I lose relationships over that? Yes. Did I
Hmm.
even literally almost lose my life over it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I could not be more grateful for my long-term recovery journey. So now switching gears just a smidge though, right? Again, my perspective is organizational development, finance, leadership. Now for your organization though,
Hmm.
what is that thing? What are the things within your organization? Not the subject matter expertise that clearly you can wield,
Yeah.
but you're building a company, happens to be a nonprofit. I say company. You're
Yeah.
building a company to make sure that the folks that are experiencing misophonia can get the resources and connection, coaching, consulting, research, whatever it may be. But
Hmm.
you're building this business that 5% of our country can relate to,
Right.
and you are wildly successful, medium successful, have more money than you know what to do with, don't have enough, have a team. Like, tell me about you're building that business. How is building that business going? And the reason I press on this so hard is because I also, when I share my experiences in life and leadership, if I only talk about $1 billion that I raised, it's not very relatable. But
Right.
if I talk about I acquired 5 companies in one year at the exact same time, and all 5 of them failed, and this other company that we used to acquire them, thank goodness, was so successful it could help them, which is still not like a weird humble brag. It's I made a mistake. I
Hmm.
took on too many things at the same time, and I actively avoided listening to wise people around me because I wanted to do it on my own terms. But if I
Right.
can be honest about that, then I give permission to somebody else to be honest about here's where I'm stuck in my business. So we can help each other, not shame each other, but help each other. So where do you need help in your business?
That's a great question. There's so many facets to it as well. I also am in long-term recovery, so that is an important part of what I'm doing.
Awesome.
And I'll get back to your question. The reason for that is I realized looking back that when I started drinking alcohol, it was to self-medicate, to numb my senses so that my misophonia was manageable and I could have a social life. And then it got out of control.
Hmm.
And so I finally had to change things and figure out how to live without that crutch, right?
Absolutely.
With
Makes
this
sense.
disorder. So I didn't plan on being here. Like I said, this was a pandemic project. So I thought, well, once the pandemic's over, maybe it's 2 years. We didn't really know. Maybe I'll go back to doing theater. That'll be fine. And at the time, we had no prevalence knowledge. It was considered a rare condition.
Hmm.
And so we just didn't have any studies on its prevalence. But as I started doing it, more and more people came out of the woodwork and so forth. And I'm with you on my ideas are not going to be what we go with. We have to listen to our community, which I call the misosphere, but it's the misophonia community on what they need. And
Isosphere.
the misosphere, it's a term I coined for the misophonia community. It's like
Yeah.
everybody who has it and their parents and the doctors who work on it, and, all those kind of things, researchers. But we have to listen to everybody else. And every single initiative we've launched has just come from people saying, gosh, I really wish XYZ existed. Why don't we do that? We got donors. Let's start working on that problem.
Hmm.
And we have to be adaptable. So at the beginning of every year, we have an annual plan, and we typically do those projects, and our board votes on them. But sometimes things come up out of the blue where we think, oh, wait a second, this is really what's in the misophonia zeitgeist right now. A lot of people are coming to us with this other problem we didn't foresee. Maybe we need to kind of redirect and maybe put a few things on the side burner and focus on this thing that seems to be a big problem for a lot of people. So yeah, it's really collaborative. And when we talk about my managerial style, it's really my play directing style, which has to be collaborative. I am not the dictatorial type. I am not the authoritative. You do this, I don't want anybody to feel subordinate to me or in any way. We're all working on this together.
Sure.
We're all equals, and it might be ultimately my responsibility to make the final decision on do we do A or B or which direction we're going to go with it. But at the same time, I'm responsible if it fails, so I don't mind doing that either. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm very much a collaborative. Everybody's on the same page kind of thing.
Yeah. That's awesome. So from that place, your collaborative leadership style, the annual kind of the annual process of voting on initiatives throughout the year while still
Mhm.
being flexible and working on things as they come up through the year, what would you say your top two challenges are?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I guess that was part of the previous question. I got off on a tangent and didn't answer it. But where we are as an
Hey,
organization
that's why
is,
I'm the host.
all
I
right,
get to
that's right.
facilitate.
Keep me on track.
Like,
Steer
hey,
the sailboat
so
back into the waves.
those problems. Anyway, go ahead.
Right. Well, as an org, we're in a really interesting but stressful juncture, which is we have no full-time staff. I've been a full-time volunteer. I have
Mm.
not been paid anything for the last 4 years to work on this organization, but that's by choice. I can't blame anybody but myself for that. And we're at a point where the org really needs to grow and get from that $12,000 a year budget to that $120,000 a year budget. And that might include like me getting a salary or us hiring some people. And so this is kind of new to me. I know you've worked with organizations through this, but to me this is uncharted territory. I'm going out into the ocean without at night without any kind of clear navigation, although lots of people have done this. So we're at that point where I have to decide, do I put or is there demand enough to support that? Probably. I just don't know what that looks like yet.
Mm. No, that's good. Um, and not only do we help, obviously, a lot of companies navigate that, but I built young people in recovery for their first 3 years as a volunteer. And my
Yeah.
first full-time staff member was not me. My second full-time staff member was not me. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I was eventually part-time and then three-quarter time and then eventually full-time. But even
Mm-hmm.
then, still made the decision to secure outside income so that my own, lifestyle choices and my own, family of five and two huge dogs are not going to
Right.
be, solely dependent upon a very small nonprofit brand new organization that was advocacy driven, policy driven,
Mm-hmm.
research driven. And then it wasn't until maybe 5 or 6 years in was it, oh, snap, we're a multi-million dollar a year organization. And even then, it wasn't, okay, cool, pay me a quarter million. Like,
Right.
never,
Yeah,
right?
no.
It was just like, oh, we can now have right-sized staffing structures to support our 80 locations nationwide and serve thousands of people per year. Cool. So,
Yeah.
but going from there to where you are, not only have I made that leap, and even in about 18 months ago, started another new organization, but because of the same way with like, and this is going to be a really crude analogy or like just a messy one, I should say, maybe
Sure.
not crass, but crude,
Right, I gotcha.
is um, in the world of theater,
Mhm.
what it probably took you, what you learned in the first 5 years or 10 years, you can now do in a few months, decades in. You're like, oh, I can just see
Right.
that. I can hear that, even if I don't want to. I can
Hmm.
hear that. I can see that. Um, just give me an hour and I'll tell you the biggest five things that you need to fix. And I can do that in an hour,
Hmm.
which took me years to get to. And so
That's
18 months ago, because we talk about past winosis, I don't want to tell you just stories from, eons ago of success, but just the last 18 months, multiple for-profit and nonprofit organizations going over $1 million each. And
yeah.
like, because it's not that it's a guarantee and it is very hard, difficult, and it is not perfect. Ask anybody who says that it's being done perfectly is, I think, a little fibber. But I say that to say is pattern recognition and muscle memory kick in to
Hmm.
where what you could accomplish in the next 6 months with other people that have done it before, you could really can essentially turn decades into years. So I'm
Hmm.
excited to see your journey. I'm excited to maybe even be a part of what that journey looks like.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's an exciting time because you're in a
it is.
familiar spot, you know?
Hmm. And it's going to take shifting my own frame of mind. Uh, while you were talking, I was sort of reminded there was I guess about 100 years ago in the 1920s, there was a concept that sort of started to blossom and became more popular in the 50s and 60s, and it kind of died out, called the servant as leader. It's making a little bit of a comeback, I think, but it's where a leader is not, the king, the hierarchical person who's telling everybody what to do. It's somebody who is of service to everybody else to help lift them up and help, be their servant to help them do their best work. And that's kind of odd thing for some people to wrap their mind around.
Sure.
I've kind of tried to approach it that way. So far, the organization, our fundraising, I've called, well, actually, it's not my term. It's an evolutionary biology term, but it's indirect reciprocity. And
Mm,
indirect reciprocity just means if we're doing good things, people will see that we're doing things and are on the right track and we're earnest and transparent.
mm,
They'll donate to us. I don't have to ask them. They'll just kind of go, oh, this seems like a good organization. I want to donate to them. That's worked so far. We've actually raised more, as far as I know, than other organizations in our space just by not really even doing any fundraising, just by trying
yeah.
to do what people need and be
Yeah.
transparent and nice about it. But I think we've shifted, which is
Sure.
we're at that point where that's not going to be sustainable if we
Yeah.
want to grow. So we actually have to do some real honest to goodness fundraising for once.
Oh, we need to have a whole other session.
Right.
So yes and amen. I get it, right?
Right.
So even taking indirect reciprocity,
Yep.
right?
Yep. It's not my term. I just
Yeah,
borrowed
yeah,
it and
okay.
applied it to this.
I have been a huge benefactor or beneficiary
Hmm.
of indirect reciprocity, where it's almost like I almost didn't really have to work that hard for that to happen, but like that was a really big deal. Like but I did the
Yeah.
work. It was the quiet right, as we say at Complimentor. Like
Hmm.
it isn't luck. It's like a signal of us doing the right thing, and but then also there's another perspective, which doesn't mean that that perspective doesn't count anymore. It's kind of like
Hmm.
Lewis and Clark talking about, well, it's time to you got to leave the canoe and get on the horse.
Right.
What got us to where we are, we're grateful for it and glad it worked. But in order to get over the Rocky Mountains, like I cannot canoe up a 14er.
Yeah, you got to shift
That's not
trajectory
going to
and
go well,
improvise.
you
Hmm.
know? And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
what is that? And just rhetorical question. What is that? No more canoes and I have to get on the horse and I've got to now, closed mouths don't get fed. And so, and I'm a very strong direct asker. I literally just raised or made an ask, I should say, for $100,000 from an individual yesterday and another $250,000 from an organization yesterday. Like
Hmm.
both of those things, I just made direct asks for in the last 24 hours. Most people that are in charge of fundraising, whether it's for profit or not for profit capital acquisition,
Hmm.
they don't do those things every single week.
Right.
And
And I
and they don't get and those people don't have the money. So it's
right. It's I think part of my shift in where we are as an organization and our thing is to still maintain that servant as leader, being of service to the community,
yeah,
which I kind of got from recovery programs,
sure.
um, uh, to the next level. I
Yeah,
was talking to my wife, who, she's been with me this whole time. The reason I can be a volunteer is because she has a pretty reliable job, and we live in a very low cost of living place. Otherwise, this wouldn't have happened. But we were talking about how back when when I started this organization, the things that I thought an organization like ours needs to do and needs to make available as resources, we've done. We've run out of our to-do list. We need a peer support program. It's the first peer support program for misophonia in the world. We've got it. It's up and running. We need student research grants. Nobody's ever done that. Okay, we've done those. So we've checked off all of the things that we thought we would want to do, and we never imagined our org being bigger than it is right now. But
sure.
since that time, a lot more need has opened up. And so I have to imagine what an org that's much larger would be doing.
Mm,
And, we look to other organizations as examples. We've looked for other organizations that are not directly related to ours, but are about conditions that are similar to ours.
sure.
For example, like the Tourette's. Tourette's is not related to misophonia at all, but is well known. And there's organizations that are in the 11 or $12 million
Mm,
annual budget for that, and it's less common than misophonia. So
mm,
immediately in my head, I think, well, we have plenty. We have 5% of the population. Let's get to that size. It's
yeah,
doable. They did it.
100%. No, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I obviously a big, and we've got, two more places to even visit on the podcast, but I would
Hmm.
say that when I see other people's success, it certainly is not an intimidating factor. It is a confirmation factor, right?
Right.
Abundance mindset. That means that it can happen because if
Hmm.
they are 10 times or 20 times the size of your organization and they are 20 times smaller than you by market, then you can do this, right? And again, those are
Right.
really made up numbers for anybody listening, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And some of these
Yeah,
are just kind of examples, but you're
sure.
absolutely right. And it's barring from I guess the self-actualization thing from the 50s is you can't reach that goal if you haven't thought of it. Like you have
Yes.
to first have the idea to be
Yes.
that big before you can achieve it.
Yeah. I
And
love it.
if as big as we thought our org would be is where we are now, then we just have to imagine
Yeah.
bigger.
Or in the recovery rooms, if I
Yeah.
wrote, so I'm coming, it'll be 17 years long-term recovery. Next week is when I checked into the Salvation Army 17 years ago. And if I would have written down a list of everything that I wanted, I would have massively shortchanged myself because I had
Precisely.
no concept of what it could be. So anyway,
Hmm.
two more places to visit on the podcast. Third
Sure.
place and fourth, I'm not going to combine them, but I'm going to make some way through the discussion points here. Third place, your other places. So not your home, not your work where you're going to build the first $100 million misophonia organization ever, right?
Hmm.
But now your third place is outside of changing the world and, doing all of the things and apparently reading a ton of history potentially is what is your third place? What is that for you?
It's a great question. My wife's a librarian, so libraries are one of those classic third places.
Yeah.
It's one of the few places you can go and spend a lot of time and not expect to pay anybody for anything. You don't have to spend any money. So I like going to the libraries. Shout out to libraries from there. But just I'm in my house right now. This is my home office.
Okay.
So work and home are kind of like so. St. Louis has a lot of great parks. I love
Mm,
going to the park and just walking. Walking for me is just as a meditative thing, and some exercise is incredibly valuable. Um, yeah, just getting out of the house, I think, is
yeah.
my third space. Anywhere that isn't
Awesome.
right here.
Anywhere. So if you're not at home
Hmm.
building your organization and you're not at the library, you're out on a walk, maybe snagging some good St. Louis barbecue if you were me, but maybe not. That's my jam.
I
Mind
happen
you,
to be a vegetarian, but I've heard it's delicious.
this is why we have to do background interviews.
I'm
Okay, cool.
sorry.
No, it's okay. My bad.
No, shout out to St. Louis barbecue. It's world
Yeah,
famous.
I
Yeah.
mean, I do pretty much eat barbecue 4 times a week, so my bad. But
Nice.
but we're evening each other out. So anyway, I digress.
Hmm.
So fourth place, which I always like to read the quote from our co-founder Monty Hip.
Yeah.
Fourth place is defined as where passion and motivation collide with a determined resolve to experience the life designed just for you. It is truly the freedom place.
Hmm.
What is that freedom place for you? Are you
Sounds like,
in it? Are you on your way? Is it too conceptual? Tell me about it.
um, I thought a lot about this actually. Fourth place sounds like a state of mind or state of being more than a physical place. Maybe the two are connected in a way for a lot of people. Am I kind of right to think of it that way?
There is no secret right answer, but
Okay.
it could be as literal as no, my fourth place is eating vegan barbecue at the library while I'm
I,
raising $100 million for my organization.
that would be awesome. To me, for the first thing I thought of, honestly, when I was thinking about this, because I listened to the podcast, I subscribed to it on Spotify. I figured, I assumed, maybe incorrectly, that fourth place was a riff on fourth dimension from 12-step programs. AA talks a lot about the fourth dimension, and people are like, what does that mean? It's a
Sure.
state of mind. When you get into
Yeah.
recovery, your whole outlook on life,
Rocketed
uh,
into the fourth dimension. Yes.
boom,
Yeah.
absolutely. I figured it was on that. So it's your self-actualization, your reaching your fullest potential, constant self-awareness, constant introspection, meditation on what you are, and just improving yourself and your projects to be the best. Not necessarily the biggest money makers sometimes, but it's how do I be a better person? How can I be of service to my community? We all know when we're lost in the pit of alcoholism, addiction, or whatever, our lives are unmanageable, as they say.
Mhm.
People are confused by us. We cause a lot of wreckage, not intentionally, but it's just that's the nature of this malware in our operating system. And so once we get past that, you think, okay, I really have to kind of rediscover who I am, or maybe even reinvent who I am. And I really have to do a lot of searching to figure
Mhm.
out what have I missed out on? Because I got my life got sidetracked into this hole. I got
Mhm.
off the path in the forest. I'm in the dark. Now I'm back.
Mhm.
What did I miss? I really need to work on me. I need to figure out what am I'm 50 now. I got sober at 42, but I had to think what I could only be halfway through my life. If I make it to 84, which is not unexpected, I've got another 42 or 50 years ahead of me. What am I going to do with that? I've never thought of that before. And so the fourth dimension, which is maybe the fourth place, is really being in that zone of I'm constantly working on me. I'm
Mhm.
happy with where I am. If I stayed where I am, I would be content with that. But I don't want to go backwards.
Sure.
Hard times happen, but I'm not going to go backwards back into that pit.
Yeah.
So for me, from a stoic Zen kind of way, the fourth place is just learning as much as I can. I'm an avid reader. I'm married to a librarian, but I just learning things as like an education knowledge sponge about anything. I consider like my first addiction. Like I get kind of a charge out of just learning new
Sure.
stuff or
Yeah.
being shown that I'm wrong. I might think we talked a little bit about how nonprofit budget percentages might work out, and I thought I knew what it kind of was, but I could be completely wrong. I hope I'm completely wrong. That would be awesome. I'd
I
love
think that
to
you
to
are
learn the right way.
in a good way,
Yeah,
like it's and because even if you're
sure.
half wrong, you're going to be able to be exposed to 100 times more opportunity than that you thought that you could be, right?
Precisely.
And that's
So
exciting, right?
yeah, and it's really exciting to be at a point where I guess I feel more confident.
Yeah,
People end up in these sort of pitfalls in life because we're insecure or there's certain things that we haven't addressed in
sure.
our life that are fears. And it's not that I don't have fears. I'm actually terrified of flying. I'm happy to admit that. But it's constant self-improvement. There's a lot of things I could be doing better. And I don't mean that in a competitive way, but we only get one shot at this dimension, this,
Yeah,
this existence that we have, as far as we know.
yeah,
And so, what can I do that's going to be enjoyable for me, and that will make the other people in my life enjoy theirs?
yeah. That's
So,
good.
that's my fourth place. It's a state of mind and a ongoing process
Yeah,
between now and
well
when I
said.
hit the
Yeah,
grave. Yeah.
yeah. Well said. And my next comments are not to disagree with anything that you said. Your
Go
fourth,
ahead. I don't
your
mind.
fourth place, and I know you like learning and everything, but just interestingly enough, the fourth place is not a riff on the fourth dimension. Some of us get that, but
Right.
that's awesome, right? Because
Yeah.
if that's what the fourth place means for you, that you get to have this amazing connection to, learning about our definition of the fourth place, and then what your life experience through being rocketed into fourth dimension through a series of 12 steps, 12 principles. And you're like, yeah, that's a connection point.
Hmm.
Like that makes sense, right? Like that's
Yeah.
a beautiful answer. And if it's a place of continued self-improvement, introspection and learning and stoicism, and maybe we even talk about Schopenhauer's Negative Theory of Happiness one
Oh
day.
yeah.
There's all, see, I know what's up. I
Oh
read
yeah.
a
Right
few
on.
books, like,
Sure.
the third time I went to college, right? But hey, I
But
graduated, so yeah.
yeah, and to me, there's a little bit of an obligation to kind of further flesh out my thoughts on that. I feel like,
Yeah.
and maybe you do too, I feel like I'm living on borrowed time. I didn't
Mm.
expect to be here.
Yeah.
You, I'm sure, and I have friends who were doing the same things we were doing in life who are not here.
Yeah.
And I've been given like a second chance
Yeah.
to get out of that pit and be like,
Totally.
what are you going to do to make this world a better
Yes.
place? All right,
Yeah.
let's go for it. Let's do it.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I have a extreme, and I gotta temper it sometimes. But
Mhm.
I have an extreme sense of the healthy version of the extreme is a extreme sense of responsibility.
Right.
And I do have the ability to take some shots that I know other people have not been able to, so I'm going for it.
Yeah.
And then on the other days where I got to manage my, leadership intelligence and leadership emotion, is if I'm only operating from guilt, shame, and obligation and survivorship, that's a whole other situation, right? But
Yeah.
I think that there's a beautiful balance there. But I loved your answer to discovering the fourth place. And
Hmm.
as we wrap up, I would love for you again just to share with everybody name of your organization, where they can
Sure.
find you, and any other last comments as we wrap up today. Thank you so much.
It's been a delight. Thanks for having me on here. My
Yeah.
name is Chris with no H, CRIS. The name of our organization is So Quiet. We're at soquiet.org, just like the word so, like it's so quiet in here. SoQuiet.org. We're a 501c3 tax exempt nonprofit. We work worldwide. I'm happy to hear from anybody who wants to reach out for any reason. Um, but closing, I guess, comments to wrap up sort of the through line that I see through a lot of the things we talked about is lots of things are possible. Um, don't give up. A lot of days seem like they're hopeless. A lot of situations seem like they're permanent. But from my own experience and hundreds of people that you've worked with, that I've worked with, I can tell you that people who think they are stuck in a particular horrible situation, whatever that is, mental health, whatever it is, um, slowly but surely, by working on one little thing at a time, those little things add up to big things, and you can completely change who you are as a person, what your trajectory in life is, whether it's making more money, doing what you want, living out your dream. Um, I've been in that pit. I know what it is to be in that hopelessness pit, where it just seems like everything is despair and nothing is working your way. And
Mm.
I'm not that my life is driven by the shame or the guilt of it. It's the gratitude. I am grateful and to have a second chance at what I'm doing. I do feel some responsibility, but it's gratitude, and I'm very privileged to be in a position that I'm in, and to try to make the most of the remaining
Mm.
time that I have. And anybody can do that, I think.
Yeah. No, that's good. Very, very well said. Again, please check out Chris's organization, go to his website, and especially just in case he needs to hit some percentages, make individual donations to this guy's organization,
Right.
which will then also allow him to apply for a myriad of other opportunities as well. And
Sure.
again, just learned a lot today directly from you about
Mhm.
misophonia, about your organization, and just mad respect, man. I love what you're doing and how you're impacting the country, and
Likewise.
forward to figuring out how we can work together. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been a delight talking to you. Thank you so much.
Cheers.